There's a strange phase in building wealth that no one warns you about. A. You're doing the right things, saving, investing, and making smarter decisions. And making smarter decisions than you were a few years ago. But when you look at your bank account, you feel like not much has happened yet. You look around and see that everyone else is doing better than you. Better. They have nicer apartments, newer cars, and are going on vacations, and are going you can't afford right now. And you start wondering if you're fooling yourself. No, you're definitely not. And I'm gonna share 12 signs that prove you're on track to become rich in the next 5 years, even if your bank balance isn't yet large enough to meet your good habits. Because the truth is, wealth never comes with a bang. It grows quietly behind the scenes. Just when you're so busy with your work that you don't even notice it. I think a lot about money, human psychology, and how some people manage financial challenges so easily while others are constantly stressed about their bank balance, sanity, another. If you've ever wondered whether the small decisions you make today will truly benefit you in the future, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And if this video helps resolve your confusion, give it a thumbs up. I've noticed one thing about people who become rich. In just a few years, they rarely appear. Instead, they're doing things that may seem boring and mundane, but which no one posts about on social media. If you notice even 4 or 5 of these 12 signs in your life, you're closer to your goal than you think. The first sign is that you've stopped comparing yourself to others. I brought this up first because it's perhaps the biggest psychological shift that separates people who build wealth from those who remain stuck in the same place. Why? When you're going through financial hardship or feeling like it, you constantly compare yourself to others. A coworker just bought a new car, your college roommate posted photos of their Santorini vacation, or your neighbor's house is bigger than yours. Each of these things stirs up a slight urge to spend money. You end up spending money you shouldn't, and on things you don't really need. But as you embark on the path to wealth, something inside you changes that completely upends your thinking. You stop caring about what other people are doing with their money. Not because you've become bitter, but because you've begun to realize that apparent wealth is often either acquired through debt or at the expense of someone's future security. Rich Richard sees his friend drive by in a $600 truck and thinks, "Oh, I hope this makes him happy." Diego. No jealousy, no second thoughts. He knows that his $5,000 used Toyota and his growing investment portfolio are a much wiser way to get to where he wants to be in 5 years. Poor Peter sees that same truck and immediately starts looking at cars at dealerships. He finances a $500 car at a 7% interest rate. After 2 years, he's burdened with debt and worried about monthly payments. When you stop comparing, you stop making financial decisions based on the choices of others. You move forward according to your own plan, your own time frame, and your own values, and this protects you from the 3 forces that keep most people on their toes: marketing, peer pressure, and the fear of missing out, FOMO. If you ever reach that point, here's one thing that separates those who will be rich in 5 years from those who will still be working hard but with nothing to show for it. The rich of the future have begun to value time more than things. They've stopped considering being constantly busy a luxury. They desire free space, peace, and control over their schedule more than a new watch or a bigger apartment. When your finances are tight, you have no choice but to trade every available hour for money. You go to work your ass off, and say yes to everything. But as your financial foundation strengthens, Some changes, even if only slightly, occur. You realize that money can buy you back your time. Time to think, time to relax, time to spend with people you care about, and time to work hard on work that truly excites you. Charcoal. For example, Rich Richard pays someone $150 a month to clean his apartment. This gives him about 3 hours to spend with his children or work on his project he truly enjoys. He says no to meetings that don't benefit him. His calendar is deliberately filled with blanks. Poor Peter does everything himself to save money. He spends Saturdays cleaning and Sundays running odd jobs, filling his calendar from the night. He feels like he's doing a lot and it's important, but in reality, he's completely exhausted and never has time for the things that truly enhance his life. His lideo. Instead of looking for the cheapest option in everything, you start spending money based on convenience. You learn to say no to most things you reserve your mornings, your evenings, or whatever time matters most to you. These are quiet improvements that don't show up on anyone's social media feed, but they are signs that someone's relationship with money has matured significantly. Tapos significant. Number 3, you've built a financial buffer and you don't talk about it with anyone. You no longer live from one salary to the next, but you don't brag about it either. While others flaunt their lifestyles online, you've quietly created something that truly matters. Jabwit Zanuti. Breathing space. You have some money sitting in your savings account that you don't need to touch. An emergency fund, a cushion, a cash reserve that gives you time, peace of mind, and options when life throws you a sudden challenge. Basat. You don't panic when your car breaks down. Malamatik. You don't panic when it's time to pay the bills at the end of the month, and even if you lose your job tomorrow, you won't be devastated. You'll be worried, but you'll handle it calmly because you've already established a safe path for yourself before that need arises. Rich Richard has $2,000 deposited in a high-yield savings account. When his laptop breaks down, he buys another one without first opening his bank account. When his company announces layoffs, he's cautious but doesn't panic. He has enough to last for 6 months, and he knows it. Poor Peter has between $400 and $100 in his checking account and about $300 in his savings account. Every unexpected expense becomes a crisis for him. Car repairs are paid for with a credit card. Medical bills are ignored until they're handed over to a collection agency. One thing about financial buffers is that they're invisible to anyone but you. No one can tell you have $2,000 in your savings account just by looking at you. But this invisible buffer changes the way you make every decision. You negotiate more forcefully at work because you're not forced to. Away. You back out of bad deals because you can afford to do so. You sleep better, and if you currently have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved, you're already among the top 25% of Americans. This is no small feat. Number 4, money is no longer the primary focus of your life. When you're penniless, money dominates your thoughts. Every decision feels like a financial calculation. Lunch, rent, petrol, a friend's birthday dinner. This mental calculation is exhausting and never-ending. But when you quietly start building real wealth, something interesting happens. Money ceases to be the central factor in your everyday life. You've created systems. You've automated your savings. You've managed the basics so well that you no longer need to think about them constantly. Your finances run on autopilot to a certain extent. Rich Richard doesn't obsess over credit card reward points or which grocery store has the best deal on chicken breast this week. His money runs on autopilot. Money automatically deposits into his brokerage account. Bills are paid automatically, and his portfolio is so diversified that he probably only needs to rebalance once a year. His mental energy is now freed up for bigger questions. How can I spend more time doing things that really matter? What kind of life am I actually building? What do I want the next 5 years to look like? Poor Peter still constantly talks about money. He's always looking for the next deal, the next side hustle, the next opportunity, but because he doesn't have a system, he doesn't. Therefore, he has to constantly pay attention to everything and expend energy on making decisions. Instead of managing money effectively, he becomes mentally exhausted simply trying to manage it, instead of working on making it manageable automatically. This shift from financial survival mode to financial background noise, leaving money worries behind, is the clearest sign that you've reached a new milestone in life. If money is now boring in your life, meaning you're not constantly stressed about it, that's actually a very good sign. Boring money often leads to an exciting life. The fifth point is that you think about long-term benefits, not immediate small wins and ET. People who chase instant gratification with money almost never become rich unless waiting for the next bonus, the next tax refund, or that hot stock tip from a colleague at work. If you think about building wealth this way, you'll be repeatedly disappointed. But if you start thinking in terms of decades instead of days, if the process of compounding interest on interest excites you more than stories of overnight success, you're operating with a completely different mindset than the average person. Rich Richard invests $500 every month in index funds and doesn't check his account every week. When the market drops 15%, he doesn't panic. He continues to contribute. He's been doing this for years, and he understands that this simple, consistent approach is what really works. Over 20 years, his $120,000 contribution has grown to about $3,500. That's the essence of patience. Poor Peter keeps jumping from one opportunity to another, day trading for a few months, then he ventures into crypto, then he takes a course in dropshipping, then something else. He never sticks with anything long enough to reap the benefits of compounding. After 20 years, he has perhaps only zeros in dollars, and a long list of hard-learned lessons. If you take shortcuts when you're on the path to building real wealth, some fundamental changes occur in the way you talk about money. You stop blaming external circumstances for your financial situation and start taking full responsibility. You no longer say, I can't afford this, but instead say, it's not my priority right now. These words sound similar, but the thinking behind them is completely different. One makes you feel helpless, while the other puts you back in control of your life. Rich Richard lives in a city with a high cost of living and earns $65,000 a year. Instead of complaining about rent or tax rates, he improves the things he actually has control over. To reduce household expenses, he lives with a roommate. He bikes to work a few days a week, save on gas and parking. On Sundays, he pre-preps meals for the entire week. When his friends ask why he doesn't improve his lifestyle, he doesn't try to justify or defend himself. His priorities are crystal clear. He's building his investment portfolio first, and buying a nice apartment can be done later. Poor Peter earns the same $65,000, but he spends all his energy explaining why saving money is impossible. The rent is too high. The burden of student loans is crushing him. After working hard all week, he has every right to enjoy his money. And the thing is, the hardships he's talking about really exist. Living expenses are really high, and student loan debt is a reality. But instead of dealing with these difficulties, he sees them as obstacles in his path and uses them as excuses avoiding taking any action. 5 years later, Rich Richard has $85,000 invested. Poor Peter has $4,000, and there are plenty of stories that prove it's no fault of his. Ownership doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It means choosing to work with what you have instead of waiting for the circumstances to be perfect to otoshokan. Number 7, you're earning more, but you don't feel the urge to spend more. Mara. When you're quietly building, well, something interesting happens. Your income increases, perhaps due to a pay raise, a promotion, up, or a better job, C. But your everyday life looks much the same. You get that 15 or 20% raise, and instead of upgrading your apartment or leasing a new car, you barely notice any difference in your spending. Yay, in new. The extra money quietly goes into savings or investments. This is lifestyle inflation immunity, and it's one of the strongest indicators of who truly builds wealth over time and who simply earns more and then spends more in an endless cycle. Richard earned $600 at age 28 and lived on about $45,000. At age 32, he received a promotion, raising his salary to $80,000. But his lifestyle expenses gradually increased to just $48,000. He invests that extra $32,000 each year directly into investments. By age 40, he has accumulated $80,000 in accumulated wealth. Poor Peter's income also increased from $6,000 to $80,000. But now he owns a $2,200 apartment instead of a $1,400 apartment. He has installments on a car he's already paid off and a gym membership he rarely uses. But he feels he should have them at his income level. By age 40, he has only $35,000 in savings. He feels successful because his lifestyle has improved. But financially, he's barely moved a bit from where he started. When you get a raise, your first thought isn't what you can buy now, but how much more you can invest this month. So you've changed your thinking. Richard earns $75,000 a year and spends about $55,000. The $20,000 difference each year isn't a loss of voice. This difference is what allows him to save, invest, take calculated risks, and reject opportunities that don't align with his goals and Idike. Poor Peter earns the same $75,000 but spends $80,000. Every pay raise is spent on a slightly bigger apartment, a slightly better car, or a more expensive dinner. On the outside, he'll appear successful, but deep down, he feels penniless. The gap between your income and your expenses is the most important metric in your financial life. If that gap exists and is growing, even if slowly, you're laying the foundation for everything else on this list. Wealth begins with this gap. Track your spending for 1 month. Find the difference between your income and expenses. If this figure is positive and trending upward, you're doing better than you think. Point 9. You start investing before you feel ready. I've seen a recurring pattern among people who become wealthy in just a few years. They don't wait until they're completely financially comfortable to start investing. They start even when it doesn't feel safe. They start even when they haven't fully understood every nuance of how the stock market works. They start even when they're in debt, when their emergency fund isn't as large as they'd like, and when everything feels a little tight. It's this courage to start without waiting for the right conditions that sets them apart from someone who says they'll start investing when things get better. Things never get better. There's always a new expense, a new excuse to wait, or a new excuse to put it off for another year. Richard opened his brokerage account at age 25 with just $. He barely knew what an index fund was, but he set up an automatic system to deposit $100 every month and let it run. By the age of 28, he knew more about investing than most people who had been reading about it for years but had never actually started investing. Poor Peter has been planning to invest seriously for the past 3 years. He's watched dozens of YouTube videos about portfolio allocation. He even knows the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. But he hasn't opened his account yet because he's waiting until he has enough money to invest that it feels profitable. This gap between know and doing is where most people's potential for wealth quietly dies. Point 10. You've created at least one source of income outside of your job. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to run a side business that generates millions. It could be a freelance job that earns a few dollars a month. It could be rent from a property. It could be dividends from investments you've made over time. It could even be something as simple as selling your own creations online. The key isn't the amount of income. It's that you've stopped relying solely on a single salary. When 100% of your income comes from a single employer, you could be in financial trouble just one bad meeting away. But when you have a small source of income from elsewhere, your mindset changes. You communicate differently at work. You make career decisions based on your interests, not compulsion. You sleep more soundly knowing that even if something goes wrong at your job tomorrow, your entire income won't disappear overnight. Richard started a small freelance consulting business on the side. This brings him about $800 a month. All of this money goes directly into his investment account. More importantly, this work taught him that his abilities are valued beyond his 9-2-5 job. Understanding this one thing completely changed his perspective on his career. Poor Peter invests all his savings in one place. However, his job is his only source of income, and this means that every small or big problem at work seems insurmountable because he cannot afford to lose his job. He even gets stuck in situations he should leave because he has no other support. Maintaining even a small source of income for 5 years provides both financial and mental strength that a salary alone can never provide. Number 11, you start associating with people who think differently about money. Take a look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Are they saving and investing? Are they trying to build something new? Or are they constantly complaining about their financial constraints, spending every dollar they earn? This isn't about judging your friends. It's about understanding that the people around you have a profound impact on your financial behavior. If everyone around you is buying new cars and traveling to places they can't afford, then gradually these things start to seem completely normal to you. You unconsciously adopt these habits. But if you're drawn to people who talk about investing, who openly discuss their financial goals, and who are more excited about the interest they earn on their investments than buying the latest shoes, it means your perspective has completely shifted. Richard joined an online community of people focused on financial independence. He has 2 close friends who also invest regularly. They don't talk about money all the time, but when they do, the conversation is about making money, not spending it. This environment reinforces their habits without any effort. Poor Peter's group of friends has a different money culture. Friday night means going out and spending dollars. If you suggest a cheaper option, you're met with a level of miserliness. The social pressure to spend is constant and exhausting. You don't need to change your entire social circle overnight. But if you've noticed a change in yourself, you're now more interested in conversations about building wealth. If you've even found 1 or 2 people who think about money the way you want to, then you've changed the direction of your life. Environment shapes our behavior, and over the course of 5 years, our behavior determines our wealth. Number 12, you've started saying no to things that used to entice you. This last point may seem small, but it could be the biggest sign. You've now developed the ability to resist purchases, experiences, and opportunities that would have drawn you in just a year or two ago. Flash sales no longer entice you. You're no longer in a hurry or anxious to buy limited edition items. And even if everyone is going somewhere, and you're told you should go too, you don't ignore your financial plan. This doesn't mean you should be unhappy or deprive yourself of happiness. It simply means you've strengthened the habit of delayed gratification so much that it no longer feels like a sacrifice. It simply feels like a kind of clarity. You know what you want long-term, and the temptation of trivial things no longer distracts you as much as before. Rich Richard receives an invitation for a weekend trip, estimated to cost around $1,500. He thinks about it for a minute and then decides that this trip doesn't align with his current priorities. He doesn't feel sad about it. He doesn't feel like he's missing out on anything fun. He simply knows that if he invests his $1,500 now, it will be worth far more than a weekend trip in the future. 6 months from now, he won't even remember this trip. Meanwhile, poor Peter, when he receives the same invitation, immediately says yes. He pays with his credit card, thinking he'll deal with the debt later. 3 months from now, he's paying off his debt and barely remembers what he did. The ability to say no isn't just self-discipline. It's a sign that your identity has changed. You're no longer someone who spends money for momentary pleasure. You're someone who builds something to feel secure for years to come. This inner transformation is far more valuable than any single investment you could make. And once you understand this, it never goes away. If you recognize even some of these 12 signs in your life, you need to understand one thing. You're not just getting by. You're not just surviving. You're quietly building something that most people will never have the patience or discipline to create. The fact that it feels free of drama without celebration or fanfare is proof that it's working, and that it's working. Wealth built on consistency and quiet, boring decisions is wealth that lasts. So keep moving forward. It may not seem like much now, but 5 years from now, when you look back, you'll realize that this was the time when everything quietly began to change. Just the way